How, very broadly speaking, the canonical Gospels provide us with two views of Jesus. Jesus of the Synoptic Gospels, which in turn has its most basic form in the Gospel of Mark, and the Jesus of the Gospel of John, the Johannine letters, and the non-canonical Gospel of Thomas. The Jesus of Mark was probably the Jesus known by early Christians of a Syrian or Palestinian congregation. They would think of him as being a Galilean carpenter who became the adopted Son of God at his baptism at the Jordan River by John the Baptist. This Jesus was tempted by Satan in the wilderness, overcame these temptations, and then set about demonstrating his power over Satan and evil by these acts: exorcisms, healings, restoring life to a girl who had just died. Completely misunderstood by those, even by those closest to him, friends, family, neighbors, and completely rejected by the religious leaders of his community. This Jesus is eventually arrested, tried, and after begging God to spare his life, is executed in the most painful, public, and humiliating way imaginable at the time: public crucifixion by the Gentile Romans. The final cry of Jesus in the Gospel of Mark, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me, is supposed to be taken as a reminder that early Christians could expect to suffer as the Master suffered, and to carry the cross of martyrdom. The bleak ending of the Gospel sets up a strong expectation of the parousia, or second coming, at which time Jesus will return to complete the establishment of the kingdom of God. A follower of the Johannine tradition of Jesus would be much less concerned about the doings of the earthly Jesus, and much more about the meaning of his divine nature. This Jesus was neither adopted by God as an adult, or born of a virgin as a way of marking intimate relationship with the Father. This is a pre-existing Jesus, the Jesus who is also the eternal divine Word, or Logos, which all reality is called into being. As part of the eternal, this Jesus took on human form, otherwise known as the Incarnation, to reveal to others that faith in him opened the way to spiritual rebirth and eventual ascent into heaven for his followers. There is no hesitation in this Jesus about his impending death. It is the quote-unquote hour of glory where he is permitted to return to his celestial origins. There is no fear or anguish, but the simple acknowledgement that his divinely ordained work has been completed. The Johannine Jesus does not speak in parables, deliver predictions of his second coming, or stoop to debates with the Sanhedrin about how the Mosaic Law should be implemented. This Jesus assures his followers of his unity with the Father through long metaphysical discourses that demonstrate he is the only way to God. Believers would know this already for themselves because of the experience of the arrival of the Paraclete, which helps them to perceive the divine nature and cosmic significance of Jesus. This Jesus would have no need to be baptized by an inferior such as John the Baptist, and would be so beyond the unholy that any thought of being tempted by Satan or needing to perform exorcisms is too ridiculous to even be contemplated. Evil knows him and flees his presence without words having to be spoken. Wisdom in the kingdom of God. I find that the understanding of Jesus presented in the Synoptics, while complicated and varied from Matthew to Mark to Luke, is generally the easier of the two broad understandings of Jesus found in the New Testament to understand. From wandering preacher, teacher, healer, whose mission it was to usher in the kingdom of God on earth, and when he died with that unfulfilled, would return at some future point in eschatological fury to complete the task. The broad tradition represented by the Johannine literature in the Gospel of Thomas is thus clear and more reliant on comprehending the nature of the wisdom literature tradition from the history of Israel. In this understanding of Jesus, we see an emphasis on Jesus as the relator of divine wisdom rather than the bringer of the final judgment. This tradition carries little emphasis on Jesus' teaching about the kingdom, but the nature of the kingship of Jesus is probably what pushes Pilate over the edge about executing Jesus. For reference, please read John 8:33 through 19:22. I'm sorry, 18:33 through 19:22. During this conversation, Jesus clearly states that his kingdom is not of this world, i.e., that it is not a political entity. But he also does not clearly define what the nature of his kingship is, what his role is, and how his government will appear and operate. Here we must harken back to the beginning of the Gospel of John, where the writer identified Jesus with the eternal Word, expression of immortal wisdom through which God calls all reality into being. In his physical person, the Incarnation, Jesus reveals and shares with others the wisdom by which God rules and communicates his will. We see this in the Gospel of John, where the author links Jesus with Israel's wisdom literature, the religious teachings that associate the wise person with the gods of Basileia, that's a Greek word, the heavenly kingship. A good example of this thinking can be found in the non-canonical book, The Wisdom of Solomon, a statement of the connection between the Basileia and divine kingship. For she being wisdom, ranges the earth in search of those who are worthy of her. The true beginning of wisdom is the desire to learn. The concern for learning means the keeping of her laws. To keep her laws is a warrant of immortality. And immortality brings a man near to God. Thus the desire of wisdom leads to kingly stature, or Basileia. This is from the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 6:16 through 20. Wisdom also reveals the kingdom of God. She, again being wisdom, guided him, Jacob, representing the nation of Israel, on straight paths. She showed him the Basileia to Theou, another Greek term meaning literally the kingdom or sovereignty of God. This is from the Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 10, verse 10. In Israel's wisdom writings, wisdom imparts knowledge, divine favor, and immortal life. See these references in the Hebrew Bible. Proverbs 2:1 through 10, Job 28:12 through 23, and the entire 24th chapter of the book of Ecclesiastes. She discloses the secrets of the unseen world to those who pursue her. The references to Jesus unveiling the secret, or the mystery of the kingdom of God, see Mark 4:11, may preserve a tradition similar to that in the Johannine community, that the teaching of Jesus focuses on the revelation of previously hidden cosmic truths. This view of the kingdom of Jesus, followers come under God's rule by imitating and participating in the divine Basileia. And Basileia implies kingly autonomy, freedom, and self-determination, living as the master of one's own situation. Examples. The Jesus of John tells his followers he has already conquered the world, John 16:33. The supreme self-confidence he demonstrates in his teaching may come from the sense of having the divine wisdom that leads to personal freedom. See Matthew 7:28-29, Mark 1:22, John 8:22. It is this confidence that allows him to overrule the Torah and drives the religious leadership of Israel into such a frenzy that they accuse him of blasphemy. As one through whom wisdom speaks, Jesus is free to recognize his own kingship. Even if it is not very clearly defined in the confrontation with Pilate, that does not matter. As the Roman governor, Pilate could not tolerate anyone claiming to be a king, for this would be a potential rival to Caesar. The coming of the Paraclete, foretold in John 14:10 through 14, endows the followers of Jesus with the same heaven-sent wisdom that Jesus himself carries, John 16:7 through 15, and thus the disciples carry the same authority of the kingdom as carried by Jesus, John 14:12 through 21. I know, clear as mud. It definitely takes some sifting and thinking through. I do think this is a helpful way of understanding the tradition of Jesus represented in the New Testament by the Johannine literature and by the non-canonical Gospel of Thomas. Good luck on this weekend's test, and we'll be in touch.